The NFL gobbles up Thanksgiving and Black Friday, plus the Skins game returns. Front Office Sports Today starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, your look inside the stories that are shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado here in New York City, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. Changing the game has always been our game. You can access Nasdaq-100 companies in just one ETF, Invesco Distributors, Inc. Now, coming up on today's show, we're going to chat the return of the Skins game after more than a decade off the air. But let's first dive into the big NFL feast this Thanksgiving on our main event. Well, it's that time of the year to fill up on family, turkey, and tons of sports as the NFL continues to exert its dominance on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Plus, could this week's Chiefs-Cowboys matchup be the highest-rated regular season game ever? Well, let's bring in some experts here. Front Office Sports reporters Mike McCarthy and Eric Fisher. Gentlemen, great to see you guys as always. Mike, let's start with you in this week's games. I mean, we have the Packers-Lions on Fox, Chiefs-Cowboys on CBS, Bengals-Ravens on NBC. Clearly some tasty matchups here, but why are execs more bullish on this year's games than maybe years past?
Well, the NFL is on a complete heater, Baker. Ratings are up 7%. They're actually pacing for their best TV season in over a decade, their best year since 2015. And then you also have the takeover of the holidays. As we all know, the NFL owns Thanksgiving, but now they're going to own Christmas. Sorry, NBA, but they are. And then, you throw in, all the reporting that Eric has done on this big data. I mean, Eric has said that this is pumping up ratings by estimated 5 to 10%. So you put it all together, Thanksgiving could be a perfect storm. We could see the first regular season game to average 50 million viewers.
Which is just incredible to think about. And Eric, Mike's referring to that Cowboys-Chiefs game on CBS. I mean, what do you think? Do you think this has the juice to really get 50 million plus viewers to watch it?
50 is a big number. I think we can safely say, for all the reasons that Mike described, that we're safely going to have a regular season record. And that was set 3 years ago with a little over 42 million. These teams it would work a little bit better if these were really fully the Chiefs of old or a better Cowboys team, but we got a 6-5 Chiefs team and a 5-1 Cowboys team. They did both win last weekend, but to go from 42 to 50, that we're talking about 20% lift right there. So that feels a little big. I think maybe somewhere in the mid to high 40s and indeed setting a record. That's kind of where my head is at. Now, if we get into some crazy overtime situation and people start texting each other and you get some late pulls in those final quarter hours, maybe that does change the equation a little bit, but 50 feels a little big for me.
Let me point out one thing, though, Baker, and Eric is a good point. 50 is a huge number. But Bismarck said that God protects drunks, little children in the National Football League. And as usual, they are just as lucky as they are good. You had the Chiefs and the Cowboys, Eric, right? Both with lousy records. And then the Sunday before the Thursday Thanksgiving game, they both have staged these incredible comebacks to keep their playoff hopes alive, giving everybody, hope. So, again, it's good to be the NFL. Luck always seems to be on their side. And this Sunday's games were the perfect way to tee up Thursday's game between the two biggest draws in the NFL.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Eric, you were mentioning, obviously, the teams this year, the Chiefs and the Cowboys, not the best of records. I mean, last year's Cowboys-Giants game, both teams didn't have as good of records either. And that was the 5th most watched regular season game of all time. I guess the question is do the records even matter? People are just going to tune in to watch anyway.
Yes and no. It's important to remember that the early game, the 1:00 game, almost beat that late afternoon window last year. We thought that of all the years, last year might have been the year to get it done, and they came really close, like within about 1 million average viewers of making that happen. Obviously, the spread's going to be a little bit different this time around with the Chiefs involved. Still got a really good game in that early window, and I do think that might sort of spread out the meal patterns a little bit because again, part of why the 4:00 game does so well is everybody has the meal and then settles in front of the television, and some people may do it the other way around, again with a really good early game, and so that may just diffuse the viewership a little bit. But again, it's important to remember that you've got two really good games here early, and then this primetime game, not what they drew up in the springtime with the Bengals not being what they were either. But not a terrible primetime game either.
Yeah, it's an incredible triple header, and of course the NFL, that 4:00 slot, as Eric says, is beachfront property. That's where they put their biggest games, and they put this back a little bit. Actually, Eric, if I'm not mistaken, has a 4:30 kickoff, right?
Yes.
So it's a little bit later and gives everybody time to get into their Snuggie and, experience their turkey haze and have their 18th beer of the day and just really enjoy some football.
I was going to say, that's just a live look of me and Mike on Thursday, but yeah. Mike, the history here, obviously the Cowboys, the Lions, even the Chiefs to a certain extent, pretty much always mainstay on Thanksgiving. For those that don't know, what's sort of the history behind these Thanksgiving games and why we see usually the same teams almost always on it?
Well, it's a tradition that goes back decades, and I think it really became popular, and I'd love to get Eric's take on this too, during the John Madden era. Before that, it was kind of all right, Thanksgiving, the Lions are going to play, and it was all right. It was, in fact, a lot of people, didn't like it. And then John Madden came along and turned Turkey Day into a national holiday for the NFL, the Turkadin and the old Madden team and everything. And I really give the credit, Baker, to the late, great John Madden for turning, NFL Thanksgiving Day into, as I said, a national holiday, right up there with the biggest events.
Yeah, Eric,
it's also important. Important to remember that before Thursday became an every week part of the schedule, this was, in the olden days, like the two lone Thursday games of the entire schedule, and teams didn't like playing on the short week. And this was part of particularly for the Cowboys, part of their national branding effort to raise their hand and say, we want to be America's team, and raising their hand again and saying, we want to be on this national showcase. And that was part of them kind of establishing themselves as a team that went far beyond their local market.
Yeah. Interesting story, Baker. The Steelers were actually given the opportunity to be America's team, and they turned it down. It started out as a marketing gimmick by the NFL based around an NFL Films documentary. And they went to the Steelers and they said, how would you like to be in a documentary about America's team? And they said, we're not America's team, we're Pittsburgh's team. And they went to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys, of course, will do it.
Yes.
They grabbed it with both hands. So, but if I could just make one more point, I agree with everything Eric just said. But I also think the fact that having the Lions kind of harkens back to the gritty Midwest roots of the NFL. When you think of the NFL, the old NFL, you think of teams like the Green Bay Packers and the Lions and the Bears and the monsters of the Midway. It's a Midwestern league. It was born in the tough, hard scrabble Midwest, and I think the Lions reflect that.
And now that we have a really good Lions team, it's taken on this extra juice here these last 3 years, that for many years the Lions were, mediocre at best, but now we have a very legitimate playoff contending team. And this is part of why they almost prevailed over the late game last year in the ratings, and they'll put up a solid number again this year.
They're a fascinating team, and don't get me started on the Lions, Eric, you know what I mean? They beat my Giants, you know what I mean? Somehow my Giants found a way to lose. I have never seen a football kicked start fading right and then hook back left. That was an optical illusion or something.
Well, this gets to another question. Obviously, you guys have, all of us, but you guys a lot, have seen a lot of these Thanksgiving games. Is there one particular memory that stands out the most to you guys on Thanksgiving coverage?
Barry Sanders, you know what I mean? To me, he is the greatest run back in the history of the NFL. And, when you sat down, with your family on Thanksgiving, you got to watch Barry Sanders run the football. It was fantastic.
I think it was 98 Lions Steelers where they screwed up the coin toss, and there was confusion as to who Jerome Bettis was picking in terms of the heads tails, and the Lions scratched out a very controversial victory.
I remember that vividly, both of those. Amazing. By the way, we're going to take a quick pause in this conversation. We're going to come back after a really quick break, and we're going to talk about how Amazon is now taking over Black Friday when Front Office Sports Today returns right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado here in New York City, and this podcast is brought to you by Invesco QQQ. In football, changing the game begins with rethinking it, like rethinking how players work on their game. And with wearable technology, advanced analytics, AI, and more, that same innovative thinking that changes the game could also change your portfolio. And Invesco QQQ gives you access to the innovators who are rethinking the world. So let's rethink possibility. All right, let's dive back into our conversation about the slate of games this week on Thanksgiving and Black Friday. Let's bring back Front Office Sports reporters Mike McCarthy and Eric Fisher. Gentlemen, great to have both of you guys back. Let's talk, Eric, about Amazon now entering in the conversation for Black Friday. They have a full slate of coverage, 12 full hours of live coverage. That includes the return of the Skins game, the infamous golf event, and an NBA doubleheader. Is this now Amazon's way of owning that particular day? Because we're shopping that day also.
Yeah, they've had great success these first couple of years, even with some somewhat subpar NFL games. But in terms of the overall strategy and their branding and sort of staking a claim in this space, it's still been a great success, and they're just sort of turbocharging it this year, taking that one NFL game and adding 3 more broadcasts on it with the golf and then the basketball doubleheader, really all day and all night, essentially. They're rock and rolling all day and partying every night. Taking the viewers all through a full day of sports and obviously having the shopping integration throughout. And so I think it's really kind of a huge sort of company play for them, that all of the sort of elements of what Amazon does distilling down into a single day.
Yeah, Baker, I agree with Eric. I mean, when we did the live tuned-in event, I told Jay Marine of Amazon this was the smartest business ideas I've ever seen. Here you have Amazon, an online retailer, turning Black Friday into a football holiday. And at the same time, they get to screw over their, brick and mortar retailers who are their rivals, right? So the pitch is perfect. You don't have to go to Walmart and be trampled on Black Friday. You can order your Snuggie here and, here, and you can still watch football. And, if the wife or the husband complains, you just tell them, look, I got these Black Friday deals and, I got a football game. What do you want?
I was thinking about you the whole time, while I was watching. Eric, there's so much talk about, the NBA doubleheader that night, which, obviously when they thought of the schedule for this Black Friday, they saw, Dallas and Cooper Flag going back to Los Angeles to play Luka Doncic in the late game. Obviously, it hasn't turned out to be a great season for the Dallas Mavericks, but do you feel like this game maybe gets overshadowed by all the NFL coverage, or is this sort of still a great sort of day to highlight all the sports coverage?
I think each one of these things, even the golf in the morning, they've got some personalities there. I think you've got some very good NBA Cup matchups, and then a much better, really, than expected NFL game as well. That when they first announced this in May, when the schedule came out, it was okay. You had the defending champion Eagles and then the Bears, not knowing what the Bears were going to be, but 2 top 5 media markets, pretty good. But now you got 2 division leaders. The Bears have been much better than expected. And so you really have quality all the way through, including and through these NBA games.
It's a great point by Eric Baker, to go back to one of your earlier questions. Why are the NFL ratings so strong this year? One reason is the Bears. Mm-hmm. You've got the 3rd largest market, really gunning right now, and they're drawing viewers and they're drawing interest. And, if you get New York going, in addition to, the Rams in LA, the Bears in Chicago, and of course, the Chiefs and the Cowboys, there's no stopping this league.
Yeah, great point. There has, though, guys, been some pushback in terms of how Nielsen specifically sort of rates these big streaming events. Do you think big ratings on streaming platforms like an Amazon or even a Netflix are more or less impressive than maybe the numbers that we get on a traditional broadcast network? Just because it feels like a lot of these streamers sort of cherry pick or sort of change how we sort of look at these numbers than maybe traditionally we had been with like a CBS or a Fox? Eric, I'll start with you.
Yeah, it's important to remember that, particularly as it relates to big data plus panel, this new methodology that Nielsen formally introduced in September. Long before that, Amazon was sort of an early tester and an early adopter of this methodology. And so when the lights officially came on this is the official new process and it's going to be the basis of all, press statements vis-a-vis viewership, Amazon was already there. It is a fundamental difference in terms of what they're doing versus Netflix or YouTube, where they have been using various unaudited, unapproved methods. So it's really, really important to sort of put Amazon on one side and these other streamers in the other, because what Amazon is doing, they were into big data plus panel even before it was officially a thing.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that, I mean, I think what you're seeing, Baker, is seeing some of the big streamers like Amazon starting to get linear type audiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be that they were so far behind. It was like they had to factor that in. But Amazon Prime Video is pulling 17 million people on a Thursday night football game. That's what Thursday night football used to do. So the other thing that the streamers like to beat their chests about is their younger viewership. On average, their viewers are 7 years younger. So, with all the leagues very concerned about a graying audience, going into the league office and being able to say to Roger, hey, I got you viewers who are 7 years younger than CBS, that means something.
The NFL has made it no secret that they plan in a few years to take their media rights and renegotiate with their broadcast partners. And given the fact that, they obviously see the inventory of each one of these games as marketable in their own ways, do you envision a scenario where we have, not say Black Friday, but more sort of eventized days using this sort of NFL schedule, these games to sort of highlight and prop up on their own specific day or their own specific holiday or their own specific sort of marketing day, Eric?
Without question, already this season across the schedule, we have more of what we're calling standalone broadcasts and having just the one game in a given slot, whether it be a Thursday night, a Friday night, a Monday night, a Saturday, once we get done here with the college football regular season, and putting more of the individual, each of the 272 games, having more of them siphoned off into their own unique windows. Now, the math is the math. The counterbalance to that is you've had a dilution of what's left for Sunday 1 o'clock and Sunday 4 o'clock, and there may be eventually some hell to pay there in terms of what you're doing to the Sunday ticket package. That's a related but maybe somewhat separate discussion, but your central point is very much there that on balance, they have found greater audiences when you're showcasing more individual games on their own.
Yeah. And the NFL, I think the next move here, Baker, is you're going to have football from 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday to midnight. I think the addition of these international games is going to lead to an international package, which of course the NFL is going to sell because nobody slices the soap like the NFL. They'll spend billions for it. And we will literally have games kicking off every Sunday at 9 o'clock, followed by the 1 o'clock game, the 4 o'clock window, and Sunday night football. So you're going to have 12 hours of football every Sunday within the next couple of years. Book it.
Agree.
Yeah, I think you guys are both spot on here. As we wrap up this conversation, what else are you guys sort of watching the next couple of days when it comes to a lot of these games that we got on Thanksgiving and Black Friday? Any sort of things that you might be reporting on starting next week for this?
I'm kind of very interested in how viewers sort of migrate from one to the other. How well does Amazon actually move viewers from golf to football, then to basketball? And in the case of on Thursday, there's college basketball on each of these networks after they get done with their football. You see a lot of, moving from one right into the other. It's not just Amazon. Then you've got a big slate of college football on Friday, and then, of course, Saturday with the big Ohio State-Michigan game. And so what that sort of interplay and migration is and sort of getting a little further into the viewership weeds, I'm very fascinated by.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated by the NFL's takeover of Christmas Day. We all take it for granted now, Baker, that there's going to be NFL games on Christmas Day. But, as Eric well knows, they only did this a couple of times for decades. I mean, it was an NBA holiday. But the NFL doesn't respect anybody, even itself. They don't respect the NBA. They're just going to roll over them. And, if LeBron doesn't like it, that's too bad.
Yeah, LeBron with that famous saying that this was our day, but the NFL clearly has taken that over.
Sure it is.
Gentlemen, what a wonderful conversation this was. Have a wonderful holiday. And we, of course, Mike, will talk about those Christmas Day games here in the next couple of weeks.
You got it.
Mike, Eric, thank you guys so much. And of course, happy holidays to you. And be sure, of course, to sign up for the Tuned In newsletter by going over to frontofficesports.com. All right, meanwhile, for the first time in 16 years, golf's big event, the Skins Game, returns. It'll be broadcast on Prime Video on Black Friday, and it'll feature 4 players from the Ryder Cup, including Tommy Fleetwood and Keegan Bradley. So let's bring in Chad Mommy. He's the executive producer of the Skins Game. He's also the co-founder and president at Pro Shop. That, of course, is the production arm behind Netflix's Full Swing. Chad, great to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us. So for those who are unfamiliar with the Skin Game, explain a little bit about it. How does it work?
Yeah, the Skins Game is, one of golf's classic formats. It kind of invented this idea of the silly season. The first one, 1981, ungodly amount of money for the time, the biggest stars in the sport. When we were researching bringing this thing back, we found out the Skins Game in 1986 actually used to outrate the Masters tournament. So wow. Really amazing heritage, great history. The way that the Skins Game works, it's 4 players. They're each playing as an individual. Each hole has a certain dollar value that escalates as the match continues. And if 2 players tie on a hole, then the dollar amount carries over to the next hole. So when you win, you have to win outright. You have to beat the 3 other guys. You get the skin and all the carryovers and obviously the dollar value that follows that. And our big twist this year is, in bringing this thing back, we wanted to really feel like the players had some real skin in the game and some real stakes. So we have a $4 million purse, which is the largest Skins game that anyone's ever played for. And our hook is we're doing what's called a reverse purse. So each player is starting with $1 million on the first tee. And when skins are won and lost, it's coming out of the other player's total. So if you're one of these guys and you push the first 5 or 6 holes and there's over $1 million on the line and someone takes the skin on the 6th hole, that player's total is going to go up. Everyone else is going to go down. And if you don't win a single skin by the last hole, you'll be down at 0. So we're not paying appearance fees. These guys literally can go home with $4 million or 0 or something in between. So we think that's going to get their attention. And a lot of these made for TV events over the last 10 years, we haven't seen this format in a long time. It's always been team events. The match was always sort of 1v1 or 2v2. And what's really fun about skins is you get these shifting allegiances as the match progresses. You see Tommy Fleetwood cheering for Shane Lowry to make a par putt to push the hole. And then the next hole, he's rooting against him to make a birdie putt to win the skin. So you get shifting allegiances. Obviously, with our players, you've got 2 European Ryder Cup players, 2 heroes in Shane Lowry and Tommy Fleetwood. And then obviously Captain Keegan and Xander Schauffele, who took down John Rahm on Sunday singles. And there's already some chirping happening between these guys. Couldn't be more excited to bring this back to Amazon.
And I feel like Skins Game is like such an easy thing to produce. It's easy for people to sort of understand the rules a little bit. And I also feel like you can produce this for television really, really well. Yep. Why was really the right time to bring this back? Was it because Amazon was a partner here?
This has been something that I've wanted to bring back forever. And when I did Full Swing and obviously, built this big partnership with the PGA Tour, after season 1 was so successful, I remember having a meeting with the PGA Tour and they said, well, what's next? What else do you want to do? And I was like, what's happening with the Skins Game? This was part of my holiday tradition since I was a little kid. We weren't really a golf family growing up. My dad loved college football and he's a football guy. But the only golf that I ever remember being on TV was the Skins Game in Thanksgiving and then the Masters in April. And that's what I grew up with. And to me, the holidays, especially Thanksgiving, was always football, turkey, Charlie Brown, Skins Game. And, I'm of a certain age where that's what I grew up with. And now I have little kids. I want to kind of bring that tradition back. It's been a while since it's been on the air. And it feels like this new generation of player, much more confident, kind of talking smack, much more comfortable in front of the cameras. Obviously, the players are going to be mic'd up. To me, the big hook was, can we do it in a way that actually creates competitive stakes? Because I think part of the problem with some of these made-for-TV events in the past, it doesn't really feel like the players care. They've been paid some fat appearance fee to be there. The banter that you're looking for never really materializes because ultimately, they're collecting their checks. And And so we feel like the skins game in its shifting allegiances, the fact that they're starting with $1 million and watching that total potentially go down, I think that's going to get them gaming. And to me, what makes great television in golf in particular is getting fist bumps. And we think that a fist bump's going to happen early in this match when someone makes a pivotal either tying putt or winning putt, kind of right out of the gate. And I agree with you. From a television format, it's a perfect way to watch televised golf because, again, there's something to root for in every single hole. And you get these players who get invested in their competitors just as much as they are in their own game on a hole-by-hole basis. And no matter what people say, and no matter how much money is floating around pro golf, $1 million putt's $1 million putt. We could have a few of those on Friday.
And I also think just in terms of Amazon's programming for that day. I mean, look, we know Amazon owns Black Friday from all the stuff that we're going to be buying, but now you basically have the Amazon NFL game. You have this NBA doubleheader. It sort of fits with Amazon owning all of these things on Black Friday, including sports rights.
Yeah, we were so excited to bring on Amazon as our partner. We talked to a bunch of other media companies and distributors about where we wanted to land the skins game, and the idea of being a part of this kind of greatest day in sports, what Amazon's doing on Black Friday. It's a perfect intro. I mean, to be the lead into the NFL, to one of the biggest NFL games of the year. We got Eagles, Bears. Both teams, need a win. And really be the only game in town. We'll be the only live sports on at least until 12:30 Eastern time when some of the college football games kick off. And we love that idea of seeing the skins games, that iconic logo, the PGA Tour logo sitting alongside the NFL shield and the NBA logo. I can't think of any other day of sports where you get those three brands together. And so, couldn't be more excited to have Amazon as our partner. And they've been leaning in. It's awesome. I mean, the cross promotion, us kind of talking to the booth and being able to pull forward to the NFL game and send it back. Like, we are really excited to have them as a partner. They've been great. They're awesome sports programmers, really understand this landscape. And then to your point, Amazon's already got us there anyway, shopping on Black Friday. So might as well stick around and watch some sports.
Is there more sort of events that you could sort of create like the skins game, similar sort of format that are sort of made for TV that you could do also down the road that are not skins game related?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's no limit to great golf games and ways to make golf interesting and palatable for a TV audience and kind of a short, one match made for TV event. I got a bunch of ideas, some stuff in the works that you'll hear about more next year. But part of it to me was the skins game just has this history. It's got this indelible logo. It's very classic. It feels 80s in like the best way. I feel like we're in this nostalgia culture anyway. I recently was one of the producers on Happy Gilmore 2. That was like this just love fest of nostalgia. And it just kind of took you back to high school, at least if you're my age. And I think people really want that kind of nostalgia. And the skins game, having all that history, being able to come into the broadcast and set the context that this is an event that the greatest players in golf participated in, cared a lot about, from Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Lee Trevino, Fred Couples, Tiger Woods, John Daly, on and on and on and on. This is part of that history and tradition. And so, when we set out to recreate the skins game and bring it back, we really wanted to have kind of one foot in the past, because golf's biggest events are just full of history. I mean, that's what makes Master Sunday so special, that first hour where it's just heritage and history and how important this is. And there's very few made-for-TV events that have that same kind of archive, and the skins game definitely does. So, I'm super focused on knocking it out of the park on Friday, and hopefully it leads to much more. But to me, it's not Thanksgiving weekend without the skins game, and we're happy to be bringing it back.
As we mentioned, obviously, Full Swing has been a huge success for Netflix. 3 seasons already in the books. A 4th one looks to be coming out sometime next year. What can you tell us about the 4th season? Who's going to be a part of it? Any of that stuff?
I'm keeping it a little bit mum for season 4, but it's being cooked right now. We're editing season 4, so look for that, Q1 of next year. You can imagine, probably given some of the storylines we've covered and some of the storylines with Keegan Bradley and the captain's pick and now becoming a captain. And I think that, if you want to nudge a little bit of hints, I think, the Ryder Cup might be a pretty big focus of season 4. So we're excited to have that brewing and come into audiences out on Netflix in next year. And, got a lot of other stuff going on. So it's been a lot of fun.
I feel like we're in this great moment of sports documentaries and behind the scenes sort of access for fans from Full Swing or even Breakpoint that's also on Netflix and all these other shows that are out there. What does it sort of say about us that we're so fascinated by the behind the scenes stuff of this? And what does it sort of add to the intrigue about golf, knowing all of this?
I think golf is uniquely suited for a doc series like Full Swing because individual sports, the stakes are just so high. And I think, team sports, it's a little tougher because you've got it's not entirely on your back, right? You've got this team infrastructure. I like to say in sort of team sports, there's only kind of two sorts of stories you can tell, either an underdog story or, the Patriots dynasty kind of story. But golf is full of these small stakes that matter week in and week out. And the stakes could be very different for a Tommy Fleetwood, trying to get his first win on the PGA Tour, or a Rory McIlroy trying to complete a Grand Slam, or a Joel Damon trying to hold on to his card. So that's why I think that's why Hard Knocks worked so well. It took a team sport and moved it to individual stakes, because it was all about who's going to make that team. And yeah, it wasn't about winning the Super Bowl. It was about an athlete getting a chance to make a pro football team. And to them, it's the highest stakes in the world. And so you take these kind of team stakes, you make it individual. Golf is really well suited to that. And I think anytime you could open up the door to fans to see inside the lives of athletes and their heroes, whether they know them or not, it just creates a different kind of connection. And ultimately, we always told the players who said yes to Full Swing, you just got to open the curtain a little bit, and bring people in. And the more you lean into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And I think you saw that with like a Keegan Bradley who said, good or bad, no matter what, I want the cameras following me. And you saw, how that created a whole new fan base for him. And really, I think helped the rest of the world see the kind of guy that Keegan has always been his entire career. And I think that's what these shows do so well.
Well, I know we can't wait for Friday. Prime Video's coverage of the Skins game tees off 9 a.m. Eastern time on Friday. Chad, best of luck on Friday. We'll be watching. Really excited for you guys.
Thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. This was great.
All right. Well, that will do it, everyone, for this edition of Front Office Sports Today. Enjoy the games and the feast this holiday week. We'll be back on Monday. See you then.